Hello, everybody. This is Gary Matheny. Good to see you today. Today we are on episode 12 of the Liberty Observatory. Episode 12, Liberty Observatory. Thank you for joining me today. Welcome to YouTube or Facebook, wherever you happen to find me. I'll try and make myself available to as many people as I can. I just took a phone call yesterday from one of the people that has been watching this program on YouTube, and it was really quite encouraging. Today is going to be kind of fun. And so the title is Pioneer on Deck. Pioneer on Deck. And so I'm mixing metaphors, and I'm doing it intentionally right at the beginning so that I get my mixed metaphors out of the way. Because as most good English teachers know, they squirm when people start mixing metaphors. And so the two analogies or metaphors that I'm going to talk about today is the ship, guiding a ship. And the second one is the settling of America. And so they'll be looking at three aspects to each, and I'll try not to mix metaphors. But when we talk about a ship and our ship, your ship in particular, your ship of life, we're going to talk about stormy waters, choppy waters, or smooth sailing, smooth waters. And so as you're taking your ship throughout life, what kind of waters are you encountering? Stormy waters, choppy waters, smooth sailing. The irony about all this is that smooth sailing can be a little bit deceptive. For those of you who want the easiest route in life, the smoothest route in life, remember the Titanic. The Titanic sunk about 100 or so years ago in the North Atlantic on a clear, crystal clear night. It is said that the waters were smooth and not hardly rippling at all. It is said that it was such a clear night you could see the stars. Of course you could see them from the ship, but you can see them from the reflection in the water. Smooth sailing sounded great. It was so great that people stopped paying attention and they rammed an iceberg. And so don't think just because I'm talking about your ship, guiding your ship in life, that smooth sailing means an easy road, because it can be deceptive. All right, so we're going to talk about steering a ship. That's the first metaphor. The second metaphor relates to the American settlement. And of course, this is a Euro perspective. I'm an American. And so, a lot of our education and background and philosophy is rooted in Europe. I don't deny it. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm an American man. What can I say? And so three types of people involved here. We have the explorers, we have the pioneers, and we have the settlers. The explorers, the pioneers, and the settlers. And so, first of all, let's go back to steering a ship. It is so important in your life that you keep your hand on the rudder. If you are steering your ship in life, keep your hand on the rudder. That means stay engaged, stay attentive, and be willing to make whatever changes that need to be made so that you don't shipwreck your boat. So keep your hand on the rudder. Well, what does it mean to keep your hand on the rudder? To me, it means know who you are, and know what you believe. Know who you are and know what you believe. Because as you steer the ship of life, if you are building upon a firm foundation, which I believe is in Christ, you can build your ship, steer your ship in such a manner that it doesn't get shipwrecked. It's not blown away by the storms hither and there. You haven't let loose of the rudder. So let's talk first of all about stormy waters. Now, in my opinion, nobody should actually head for stormy waters. But some people do, and God bless them. And sometimes the people that head for stormy waters, if they are tested and pass the test, and most of them are relatively young, they can be made of steel inside. They can be forged steel. And guess what? That forged steel that's inside you, that character, that steadiness, can form the basis of greatness. Doesn't have to. Depends upon the circumstances in which you live your life, the epoch in which you live your life. But some people that head for the stormy waters, for whatever reason, it inspires them, it challenges them. Some of them, if they hold their hand to the rudder and survive the storm, can come out as truly rugged people inside. They can take the ups and downs and ins and outs of life. So let's talk a little bit about an example or two of stormy waters. And they're two young men. One would be George Washington. In the 1750s, remember this is before the Declaration of Independence and the American Revolution, George Washington was a commissioned officer, a major in the British Army. And he fought in the French and Indian War. And so prior to the Revolutionary generation, there was the French and Indian War. And they had battles, the British did, and the colonies who were allied with the British against the French, as well as their Indian allies. Well, George Washington, and I've read like 3 biographies of George Washington. Basically, I have not seen this refuted factually. I guess it's true. But apparently, through the course of his service as a major, he had 2 horses shot out from underneath him. Furthermore, he had about 4 bullet holes in his coat or his cloak. And so basically, you're talking about a young man who was in the midst of the battle, went to the storm, the war, volunteered as a British commissioned officer, fought valiantly, and earned a great deal of credibility and bravery, which served him well in the years to come in fighting the American Revolution and ultimately becoming the President of the United States. George Washington is a man that headed towards stormy waters. Another example would be Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill, we all have this vision of Winston Churchill when he was about 70 years old. And, he's kind of a big lump. I'm 70 years old. And so Winston had a long and enduring life. And when he was a young man, he served in the British military. And he fought in whatever imperialistic war they had against India. And so this probably would be, 1880s, 1890s. They had some type of war with India or series of battles with India or uprisings in India. And he was captured. And so basically, he escaped. And so here was a young man who headed towards stormy waters. He joined the army to fight in the imperialist wars in South Asia. And he got captured and he escaped. And so he was made of forged steel. He went into the stormy waters. He kept his hand on the rudder and he came out intact. He knew who he was. He knew what he believed. But here today, I'm not recommending anyone to head towards stormy waters. If it's up to you and you want to head towards stormy waters, then so be it. But I suggest that you do it at a relatively young age, because it's going to take a strong young man or a strong young woman to be able to hold the rudder in the midst of the storms. And in the midst of that, you will find out who you are and what you're made of. I myself am more challenged by the choppy waters. I remember when I became a Christian in 1976, one of the main reasons that I became a Christian is that I was fascinated by the concept of being a disciple to Christ. When I was a young kid growing up in a Methodist church by the airport in St. Louis, we had an old preacher. He was probably, 60 years old or so. He was born around 1900, and I'm talking about early to mid 60s or even before then. He preached discipleship to Christ. And I'm so glad that I heard that preaching, because when I came to Christ in 1976, that motivated me to be a disciple of Christ. And so that heading towards choppy waters, because you don't really know what you're getting into at the beginning of the journey. All you know is you're going on a journey. And I suggest that most or all of us should consider the choppy waters. Not all of us are made out to head for stormy waters, but we should all accept certain challenges of life in the choppy waters. I'll give you a scientific illustration. Years ago, I read an article, and it had to do with our immune system. And basically, the point of the article was made, and it was based upon scientific research, so I think it was reliable. It basically said that a certain amount of stress is good for us. That people that are trying to live a stress-free life, they have bad things happen to them. They do not escape bad things happening to them, because sometimes they become deconditioned, they become couch potatoes, they avoid things in life to their detriment. And so trying to minimize stress in your life can be unhealthy. But there is an optimal level of stress that puts your immune system on alert. It builds the muscles of the immune system by having a moderate amount of stress in your life. And choppy waters will give you an opportunity to have a moderate amount of stress in life. It's just accepting the challenges that relate to life, keeping your hand on the rudder, finding out who you are and what you believe, and surviving those choppy waters and serving a God that loves you and cares for you, knowing who you are and what you believe. So choppy waters is a good place, and I highly recommend it. The serene waters, the smooth sailing, it sounds great. It sounds beautiful. It sounds, yeah, that's where I want to be, particularly since I'm an old man now. But at the end of the day, smooth waters can be deceptive. So you, dear friend, that wants to sail smooth waters and avoid the choppy waters, remember, be careful, because the Titanic hit an iceberg. All right, so let's move now to our next metaphor. Our metaphor relating to the early settlers, pioneers, and explorers in America. We'll start first with the explorers. Explorers go where no one has gone before. I'm talking in terms mostly of Western civilization. And I'm not denying that there was a native civilization and that native Indians, Native Americans lived in the Rocky Mountains and all across the United States. And they knew more about the land than our explorers did. In fact, I've read an article or two that basically said that one of the problems with the explorers, like Lewis and Clark, was that they wouldn't rely upon the Native Americans they would meet. Native Americans were not all hostile to whites. And they knew a lot about the terrain, and they knew a lot of stuff about how things worked on the American frontier. And a lot of them were willing to help the explorers, but explorers, they had to figure it out for themselves, I guess, sometimes to their detriment. So when I'm talking about the explorers, I'm talking about people like Jim Bridger, Jeremiah Johnson, Bass, Lewis and Clark, etc. These were explorers. They were going where no one else had gone. They dare to make their life an adventure. They are out of the ordinary. They swim against the stream. They set their own course. Are you willing to go where no one else has gone? Are you willing to swim against the stream? We have a cultural stream that we're in, and we know that that stream points a certain direction. Are you willing to swim against it and go where no one has gone? I think you can be an explorer and not take that literally, that you go to a physical place where there have been no others. It can be a spiritual journey where you're willing to seek God, serve God, and do it in such a way that's outside the norm, that's outside the stream, and yet in the midst of that, please God. So be willing to go where no one else has gone and explore. So you can see that exploration sounds pretty good to me compared to the stormy waters. And I can recommend being an explorer, but it's not for everybody, not for everybody. But I consider myself in that middle ground. I guess I'm a moderate man. The middle ground is the pioneer. The pioneers are the ones that went in and they were pathfinders. They were able to follow up on the explorers. They were able to start the process of clearing the land. They were able to make the land starting to be habitable by others. And so the pioneers moved out in their wagon trains, or some of them actually got on the 19th century versions of barges and sailed, and not really sailed, but either went up or down the various rivers in America, and in order to find a new place, in order to find a spot under God's sun for themselves. They were pioneers. They were willing to move out and help settle a land. And ultimately, we come to the settlers. The settlers are the people that once the land is starting to be cleared, they move in and bring civilization with them. In other words, they bring the banks, they bring the railroads, they bring the churches, they bring the taverns and other things that Western man has enjoyed. And again, I want to say this again, that I'm not saying that Native Americans lacked civilization. They had their own civilization, and I'm not criticizing it. I'm just telling you this from a Euro perspective, that basically when the settlers came in, they brought this whole group of support system with them that made life tolerable, where they could build buildings, build homes, settle the land, grow crops, raise cattle, do everything that was needed to do to make things relatively comfortable for a community. Of course, members of that community need to find, look for, and train for productive work. It wasn't set up that you just ride along easy street and let everybody do things for you. And so basically, what I'm talking here today about is your life and the direction of your life. And so if you don't really want to head towards stormy waters, if you don't really want to be an explorer, let me challenge you to head for the choppy waters, the uncertain waters, the waters that you have to navigate and pay attention to. Or at least be a pioneer. Follow the path of the explorers and help found a country, help found an idea, help found a way of life, or maybe help restore an idea, help restore a way of life. You can do this. You are able to live free. You are able to steer your ship, and you are able to be an explorer, a pioneer, or a settler. So please, steer your ship, settle, pioneer, explore your land, and you'll be glad that you did. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day. Bye-bye.